First of all, my first thing that I want to say is, can you promise me that you will never stop the 3DMJ podcasts?
Never. I don't know if I can promise never, but I have no plans of it. It's going well. We love it. It's been really good for the team. It brings the coaches closer. Like everything about it's been so great that no, we're definitely not leaving it anytime soon.
Yeah, was it actually your idea to do the podcast, or who started the whole thing, or who initiated it?
It was my idea, but it wasn't my idea to host it. It just kind of worked out that way because I think it was my idea, and they all know I don't shut up. Um,
Hmm.
but I think it was easy for me to I don't even know why. It made so much sense because the guys are so, um, not just well known, but because I know them personally and their value is in their lessons and their one-on-ones and their coaching experience and there's some things that you just in a 5-minute video, it just doesn't translate as well, you know?
Yeah.
And so as you've heard me talk about, right, I'm obsessed with Joe Rogan and conversation, not just him, but podcasts that are not so interview like I guess because I get so much from every conversation I've ever had with the guys I coach with. I was like, everyone needs these conversations. And that was, I guess, one of the reasons too that they brought me on was just that of course they could have, there's a lot of people that would love to coach with 3DMJ, but I really wanted to help build the brand. And I knew that videos, we coach so much, especially the guys coach so much, and videos are, editing, and they're hard to get out. And I knew that conversations were good and easy and valuable with them. And so yes, it was my idea, but it's so great because because it's everybody. So
Yeah.
thank you for listening to it.
No, I mean it is seriously one of the best things. Like it is my favorite thing at the moment on the internet. Period. Like, yeah, I will link some of my favorite episodes in the show notes. Like I was just listening to the recovery diet podcast or episode today, and it was hilarious how you in the beginning you discussed how who threw up what after the post contest feasting. It was really funny. So I was kind of going to transition into this kind of topic, but you just gave me the transition beautifully. So actually, when did you, in what year did you become a 3D MJ coach yourself?
It was the end of 2015, so a year and a half ago ish.
Okay, 2015. So I guess my question on that would be, just from looking back. I mean, I'm sure there have been conversations that you can recall, but like when you look at kind of what you can provide to the team and your strengths and your competences, whatever you want to call them, but what do you think made it possible for you to become a coach after being an athlete with them, right? On a coaching client kind of basis before?
Yeah, like I said, it was never intentional, first off, right? So I think, like, whenever I decided, or not decided, the idea came up for me to be a 3DMJ coach, I'd already known them for 2.5 years, all of them personally. Um, and so it wasn't, like I said, it was never the intention at first when I was developing my relationship with the guys. And like you said, at first, I was an athlete, and I did my first season with them in 2013 with Berto as my coach. And at that time, I was starting my own, already had started my own YouTube channel, which was kind of starting to take off. And I had kind of ditched my previous life of wanting to be a professor in exercise physiology. And I started YouTubing and traveling and moved to live by Berto and Jeff and Brad. And it was, I don't know, it was just, I was making my own content. And obviously I'm really passionate about sharing useful things. I think that's something I love doing. And 3DMJ, as a consumer of their content, they were a huge, huge deal for me. And so a lot of times in videos I would make or blog posts that I would make or whatever, I would always credit them because I obviously believe that that's important too. And even though Berta was my coach, I think that's how they all just kind of knew that I existed, right? Was I would be like, Jeff, share this thing that Jeff did, share this thing Eric did, share this thing Brad did, and always give them credit or tag them or whatever in social media. So they knew I was alive and breathing. And then when I moved over there to California and was competing, I met all the guys at the shows, all of my teammates, all the YouTubers or whatever, right? Because Matt Ogus was one of my training partners, and he was obviously famous in his own right, and Eric was his coach. And so it was just kind of, I was officially part of this community, right? And that was about a year or two of that. And then, as I mentioned, I was already running my own website and everything. And what had happened then was I wrote an ebook for figure athletes, for first-time figure athletes, being like, this is everything you need to know before your first show. And it went really well. And I asked the guys, just emailed all the coaches and was like, hey, if you think some of your athletes would like this, please share it. And they were like, oh, this is so great. And them, along with some other people, other coaches in the industry, were like, we wish we had this for guys. And so I was like, well, let me do that. But since I'm not a guy, and I know that only matters on some things, especially posing. And Jeff was prepping at the time for his 2014 season. It's so weird how it all happened. Is this okay that the story's long?
No worries.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. And so I asked Jeff, I'm making this guide for male bodybuilders. You look great. Can you write up a little blurb about posing? And then can we photograph you? Because also what's really handy is my boyfriend's a professional photographer and also a 3DMJ athlete. So we went to Jeff's house, did that. The book did pretty well. And it was just a great experience, right? And that was the first time that any of the 5 guys had created something to sell online. Like, even though I created it because Jeff helped, he got some of the income from it. And through that, we actually created his own posing guide, which is for sale still on the 3dmusclejourney.com website. And so that was his first kind of taste of, other than coaching, a different way to use an online business, right? To create value in exchange for finances, So that was something that they hadn't quite touched on yet. And albeit I was nowhere near as big a name as they were, it was, I think, something that they saw. I was like, oh, this works. This is kind of a thing. And then when I was going on to my next book, I was like, because it went so well, and I still recognize that I'm not like the expert of all experts, but I was like, what's the thing that's changed my life the most? And I remember in 2013, Eric's 6 videos on the muscle and strength nutrition pyramid was like such a game changer for me personally. But obviously it was only on videos. And I was like, hey, Eric, I know you might know me. I know we've met a couple times, but can I help you put this into text format? Because he's getting his PhD. I know he's real busy, blah, blah, blah. And so that was like an 8-month process of me working with Eric. And then obviously we brought Andy on, Andy Morgan from riptobody.com. And we're building this next big thing, right? Which is actually turned out to be a really big thing for all of us. But it was in the middle of that, right? So I'd already known the guys. I'd already worked with them with ebooks. I actually did a couple posing clinics with 3DMJ just as like a guest. Hey, come help the girls, because I know that we don't have girls yet. So I just worked with them in like friendly capacity for a little while. And then I guess long story short, I was moving from California back to Texas because I wanted to be by my family. And I was like, I'm all this stuff I had done with 3D was either in preparation for a far off book launch, or it was pretty much for free because I was helping them like with their they had a new website at that time. We've since had a new one now, but they were developing a new website. I don't know. I just felt always very akin to these guys and felt like I kind of owed them like my life and my career in a weird way. And I was like, let me help you all with these things. Cause I was always so interested in it and learning it. But anyways, when I wanted to move back home, I was like, I want something a little more stable for myself. The ebooks was kind of getting exhausting. I was a little bit, I don't know. I just kind of told the guys, I was like, look, I love helping y'all, but I'm looking for something a little different, a little more Um, again, a little more stable, and I need to pull back a little bit in order to make that happen. And they totally were great about it. But at the same time, I think I was on a Skype with Eric, and he was like, well, why don't you just coach with us? And then that'll be stable. And I was like, you're joking, right? Like I just never even, crossed my mind after working with him in whatever capacity for 2 or 3 years. And he was like, well, why don't you just become one of us, and you can, all your efforts helping the team would also help you as a coach. And it would just kind of come together. And I just again, had never thought of it. And it was like a week before I was moving that this came up. And all the while in the back of my head, I'm like, sort of like ready to do a job hunt and all this stuff. And yeah, so they had a meeting Eric was like, we'll make a proposal. So I made a video of like, here's all the ways we could help each other, and this would work or whatever. And I was actually driving to Texas, an hour away from like my dad's house. And they were like, yeah, they all 4 called me and were like, we'd like to have you as coach. And I was like, ugh. So that's how it all started. A really long story, but it was never intentional. It was really last minute, but it worked out. Yeah.
No, this, I love that story, because basically you spared a whole bunch of questions that I wanted to ask you, especially because do you hear that echo as well? Like it's not gonna be a problem because I'm recording my voice separately, but okay, cool. So there is, I don't know this saying in English, but I certainly know it in my own language. It goes something like, help yourself and then God helps you out. And I guess this kind of refers to the fact that at that point, you just built up so much momentum and just kind of so much goodwill with all the stuff that you were doing, that this amazing opportunity found you without ever expecting to do it. Whereas someone else could wait for an opportunity to come all their lives and it would never come by, because 3DMJ doesn't just, hire new coaches every week. But to you, it happened. It's a great story. So yeah. Really cool that you shared it. So to make a really terrible segue here, let's get into a topic that I kind of want to discuss with you today here, and that is what makes a successful bodybuilder or physique athlete from a mental standpoint or from a mindset perspective. But instead of just asking you a super vague question like what makes a successful bodybuilder, let's look at your own story. So if you were to go back, do a little bit of a time travel and go back to when you were doing your first physique show kind of thing, you were first dieting down and stepping on stage, and look at your mindset and mental approach at that time and contrast it to what it is like today, how would that look like? What would you say are the biggest differences there?
Oh God. Okay. So the first time I prepped, is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Like I heard some pretty rough stories.
Yeah. It was, well, I still am not the best with patience in most things. I've gotten a lot better at it, but I was very, I decided I wanted to compete 10 weeks before my first show. And it was like, nobody could tell me any differently. Of course I'm going to do it. So I dove in. I basically I would lose like 2 to 3 pounds a week, which is a terrible idea for a 5'2" female. So I was in a rush. I was, stubborn, I guess. I took immense amount of pride in being a hard ass that would do it no matter what, to the point where it obviously was not the best thing for my physique, but I was making progress. So like, damn it, I was right. I don't know. I guess in a mentality, I was so attached to the feeling that I didn't consider health or longevity or even if it was a good approach, it was just, or what working even meant, right? I just thought working was, okay, we're losing fat, like, without any regard for gaining or maintaining muscle mass. I don't know. It was all kinds of messed up, but I wouldn't take it back for the world. But it was just, I guess in a word, very short-sighted, immediate gratification. What can I do now? I just had no regard for my career. I don't even think I thought about a career in this. I was just like, this show in 10 weeks and this is life.
Is it, do I recall it correctly that you mentioned it in a couple of places that you even lost some friendships at that time?
Oh yeah, all of them. Yeah, all of them. I mean, I was in grad school, so I had to go see my coworkers, which are also my friends, every day. But I was living with my best friend. We were cheerleaders together in undergrad, and I was in grad school now, and we were roommates. And the 4 or 5 years before that, had so much fun together. And she's still one of my best friends now. But beginning at that prep, I just didn't leave the house for almost anything besides work or training, right? When I had to, I barely left the house. And even when I was at home, I was just watching YouTube videos and making food. And like, there was just nothing you could tell me. And all I could explain was like, all I knew was these people don't understand what I'm going through. This is what it takes to to get this done. And, yeah, I was just above it all. I couldn't see any of that. Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, I was saying I had a few of my friends that were in grad school with me that were just like, dude, are you okay? And I was like, I'm fine. I'm just doing this thing. Like, what? So yeah, it was weird.
And what do you think drove that kind of approach to like not leaving the house? Was it a fear of not making the best progress that you could? Was it a lack of knowledge about whatever, flexible dieting or anything like that? Or was it kind of just maybe you were just hyper focusing on your progress to mask away something else? Like in retrospect, what do you think it was?
Yeah, I think a life change is exciting, right? And I think what I did in deciding to do that show was, oh shit, that's not a lot of time. So I really need to buckle down. And I guess it worked, right? I guess I probably lost some muscle mass, but I'd never dieted before, but I lost a lot of weight. I don't think I could have gotten much leaner and like still survived. So I got like third in the class, like 14. Like it seemed like it was a success, right? If I look back. So if you have this thing, you know, if you overhaul your life and then end up with this on paper success, then I think in that feedback loop, I think I thought what I did to get here, I have to obviously keep doing to stay here. And in my mind, quote unquote, like staying here was really important to me because I felt good in my brain. I looked good. All my friends told me I looked good. The internet told me I looked good. And so it was just all this internal and external validation because other than Laura, I'll even name her, my roommate that was there living with me and seeing it, if they don't live with you, everybody just sees what you put on the internet, and on the internet, I looked good. Right. And so all my friends back home who didn't have to live with me every day were like, oh my God, you're so great. You know? Yeah. I was also selling supplements at the time. And obviously everyone in that industry was like, oh, you must know what you're doing. So I was being viewed as even more educated because I changed my body. Right. And I was taking these supplements. So obviously the supplements were working so I could sell more supplements. Like it was just so much in this, other than the people that actually mattered, which is really sad. Everybody else that was like an acquaintance or I didn't even know them, right, were somehow validating that I had made all these great decisions and this was such a good thing. And again, because like you said, I don't think I changed so many variables at one time in my life that I don't think I could pick apart like which ones actually contributed to me looking this way. I just knew like, if I changed 20 pieces to get here, then all these 20 things must stay intact because that's the formula that got this. And so I think I just continued over time. So yeah.
It's funny, like when I'm listening to stories of people who are now at a certain place and promote flexibility and kind of a more relaxed mindset, it sounds like many times they had to go through that fire of just being way more neurotic than they had to be, or kind of had that little bit of an arrogance of like, look, I bench whatever 300 pounds, or I'm very lean, so I know what I'm talking about. And then they kind of reevaluated certain things. Like, do you think that to some degree you almost have to go through that fire initially to then come to better sense?
I don't know anyone that's done it any different. I don't. There's people that have been like, there's a few athletes on my roster that have been with me since their first prep. And I would say, like, you could say every prep has to go like dark a little bit, right? Like you have to get a little bit jacked up, but there's a little bit jacked up. And then there's like, you lost your whole life in relationships, And I think there does have to be some amount of dark, neurotic, maybe lightweight, depressed about some things sometimes, but there's a small amount of time that it almost has to happen. And I don't know anyone that's gone through prep feeling like peachy the whole time or keeping all their relationships without ever upsetting anyone. And like, I think it does have to happen on some level. I don't think it has to go as terrible as mine did. But I don't know if that's maybe a product of the fact that I think as a community, we all know better now. And so I think maybe if you took any 100 athletes now in their first show, that's a natural athlete, I would think there might be a larger percentage that goes through a mildly bad time versus, I bet, 10, 15 years ago, almost everyone had a terrible, terrible time. So I think there's no way to have it be like if Alberto or Jeff go through a prep, it's probably a lot less emotionally disturbing as it used to be, but I think it still has to get there. So I don't know if everyone has to. Everyone I know has, at least on some degree. But
I guess it's almost like I just heard Alberto in a recent video say that, well, I just realized that my prep was sucking just a little bit too much compared to how it should suck. Yeah, too early. Like, it shouldn't suck this much at this point. And that is something that a newcomer to this whole thing will never be able to tell. Like, they have no conception of how much it's supposed to suck, right?
Yeah, and the thing is too is when you're new, you like it. Like you know what I mean? Like, it could suck really bad, but you're like, fuck it, I'm losing weight. Like it's so new and exciting that you don't, like, you're right, you don't know what the degrees of shittiness, right? You just know, like, well, I'm in prepping, it's supposed to be shitty. And like,
yeah. And also, do you think that there is a certain degree of almost genetic advantage from a mindset perspective? And I'll specify what I mean. I was just listening to your most recent 3DMJ podcast episode today about doing a prep in a smart way. And Alberto said something about, or no, you asked Alberto about taking caffeine naps. And at first I thought I heard it wrong because I never heard about this. And I looked it up, and then I learned that this is actually a thing, that people pop in caffeine pills and then they take a nap and they wake up just before the caffeine pill would kick in. And then I was like, great, I will try this out. But then I realized, like, hold on, if it kicks in 20 minutes, that means I have to fall asleep within like 5 minutes for it to make sense at all. So, but someone like Alberto can do this. I could never fall asleep under that kind of pressure. But to the fact that he can do this probably says something about his personality, that he just has that extra degree of relaxedness, or I don't know. So do you think there is almost like a genetic advantage to some people? They're more predisposed to succeed in a sport like this?
Of course. Yeah, in a lot of ways. I mean, and what's hard is, like, again, you don't want to discredit anything Alberto's done. That dude works hard, but there are things that come easier to him. And he's the first person to say it, that he can't explain. And, if he's not thinking right, he'll lose weight if he's not paying attention in the off season, if he, or in season, like you said, if he's not monitoring how he feels, he can lose too fast. If, so he's got a lot of weird, seeming what seemed to be advantages in his genetic makeup. Yeah. I don't think I could fall asleep like that either on a dime. I don't do the caffeine naps, but I think it's so funny that he does. Yeah, there's genetics on a lot of levels, right? Like you said, it's obviously everyone knows like your bone structure, your ability to respond to weight training, your ability to relax yourself to the point of taking naps within 5 minutes. Your and his food intake for maintenance is just extremely high in general, right? It's very carbohydrate dense. Like he has very low fats. I don't know if that's an advantage or not, but it's Jeff chooses to do the same thing, whereas I need way more fat than all the guys on any of their preps, and I'm a smaller human. So it's just, yeah, I think that's a good point. The genetics isn't just about the looks. I guess it is how your body responds to things, or maybe how you've trained your body too. That's a good point. And then you have like your upbringing, right? Which isn't necessarily genetics, but it matters, right? Like I thank my freaking lucky stars every day that I grew up the way that I did in gymnastics, because I think it's made me 100% made me who I am, which is very different from anyone in my family in a lot of ways.
No, that's a great point. And I guess in a way to make a really corny conclusion on this theme, it's kind of, that's the beauty of the sport, right? That like people with all kinds of personalities and genetic makeups can make it work and can succeed ultimately. Yeah. So another thing that I wanted to ask you about, and that is a big pet peeve of mine, is off-season behavior. And which is ironic because I never competed. I guess my version of off-season is like not cutting, right? So, but I heard you mention in a couple of episodes that you struggle more off-season compared to when you're dieting, which for the average person will not make sense. Like, why would you struggle more when you eat more? But so first of all, have you found an explanation for why that is the case for yourself?
Yeah, it doesn't feel hard enough. It's not that I struggled, like logistically, if that makes sense. Like, it's not like the hard part wasn't physically hard or decision-making hard. It was like mentally unrested, kind of depressed. The struggle wasn't like, I don't know how to hit my macros and I don't know how to do my training, or like I have binge tendencies. It wasn't any of that. It was like, I'm just kind of unhappy. And with me, which again, I know it's not a normal case, I need something very athletically aggressive and important and urgent feeling in my life all the time. And if I don't have that, I don't know. I'm not happy. It's just straight up. I can't explain it. I just don't feel settled in my life. Like, stuff just doesn't feel right. And that's what all of like 2014 and most of 2015 was me working with Berto to be like, dude, calm down. Like, I can't, like, it was almost like my education not backfired, but it's like, I know that there's a certain amount of weight training that is productive and anything more is not. I get that, right? And I know that dieting is not productive. I know I don't feel like I'm jacked, but I also don't feel lean enough. So I just feel like meh. And then at the same time, there was no performance goal. Even when I was doing powerlifting, which was only for like, I invested like a year before my first competition. I didn't care enough about it. So it just still felt like I was just like waiting till I could diet again and be good at it, because at the same time, I didn't want to get on stage again and look the same. So I was just like in this weird, like there's nothing to chase, any more effort, either in terms of creating a caloric deficit or increasing training volume. Like, neither of those would be useful in the long-term goal. Cause I was finally like career looking, right? Like, if I'm always dieting and not allowing enough rest and doing too much volume and like making, like, I'll just look the same. So I knew I didn't want to look the same. I at least had that long of a view, but at the same time, I was just like not happy.
Yeah, I guess Because the reason why it was interesting to me that I heard you mention this in some podcast episodes, because I struggle with the same thing myself. Like I can pretty much, like, if necessary, I can fast for a week to get to a short-term goal. Not that I want to do that, but I'm good at grinding, but then kind of just putting these really aggressive type of strategies in the back burner and just kind of sit back and focus on the process and whatever long-term progress, that's just incredibly hard. And the way I kind of learned to explain it to myself was that it's just the lack of a short-term goal that really motivates me. Like, do you think it has to do with it as well?
Yeah. I think, because I would say that, but at the same time, my goal right now is like a 5-year introduction to this like whole new brand new sport. But I think the short-term goal within that new sport, right, is like new skills. So
which is
I get in
bodybuilding.
In bodybuilding, like if I can curl, I can curl. If I can squat, I can squat. And so there's only long-term goals, right? Whereas even though the sport I picked to compete in, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, now I have a very long-term competitive goal. There's probably 50 skills I need to learn how to do, and I only know like 30 of them, kind of thing. So the shorter term goal is like acquire these things and then get good at doing a few of them and then do them fast. So it's like, I think that is that there's no pressure. I like pressure.
Yeah.
When there's no pressure, it feels like, what are we doing this for? Yeah.
So and so just for context, what's the sport that you picked up that you were referring to?
It's called Grid. It's very new. It's only in the United States right now. It's a branch off of CrossFit. It's basically Olympic lifting, bodyweight gymnastic skills, performed in matches of 2 teams, co-ed teams that perform these relays. It's like PE, like physical education class races, but with like cleans and jerks and ring muscle ups and, all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So I think that's the best way to context it for people who have no idea. It's CrossFit, but heavier and faster and in relay races. And I don't know.
Can you still do like backflips and stuff like that?
Yes, I can do backflips. They're in the grid leg, actually. Yeah. You actually do them you compete in them. I can do backflips still, yeah.
Okay, tell me this. I'm 25. Can I still learn how to do a backflip?
Dude, of course you can, especially because you're a dude and you're in shape. Yeah, you can learn it. Yeah, you can totally learn it. Take a few classes. You'll get it.
Okay, I used to be able to do the, I don't know what it's called, but when your hands are down, like you're jumping backwards, it's like a backflip when you're putting your hands down. But anyway, that's okay, so that's your sport. And that is actually, that's a good point to mention, that like a lot of bodybuilders have taken up powerlifting, which is like not news for anybody who is following the sport. But what would you say for people who, let's say, don't want to powerlift, or they don't have another kind of athletic endeavor like what you have? Do you have clients for whom you have to kind of suggest certain strategies to channel all that obsession that they have to, like, because obviously, like, you can't be obsessed about building muscle, because then you're going to be obsessed for a very, very long time until you actually see differences. So would you have any tips for people who have that kind of problem?
Yeah. To be honest, with a lot of my first time competitors, they're having such a good time coming out of a diet for the first time that they're okay. It's the ones that are maybe after their second or third year. You know what I mean? Because the first time you come out of a dieting phase is pretty exciting in terms of like, oh my God, like you feel like you have these newbie gains again, right? So this is, again, as a fairly relatively new coach compared to the guys, I didn't expect that. That I'm thinking everyone on my roster that was a first time competitor is having a blast just lifting again, because I don't think they realized like how shitty they would feel by the end of prep. And so that's actually pretty good. But in terms of people that are just waiting, I think for most people, powerlifting is a great goal. It really is. All my athletes that do both are still very jazzed about powerlifting. I think that's great. Again, for me, I wasn't a good fit, but a lot of people are very content with just that. Some people, I can think of a couple in particular where I'm like, go hang out with your friends again, call your husband, call your boyfriend, whatever. But I think I've made it a priority for them to go get their social life back. Yeah. But I haven't had anyone that actually needed to, besides myself yet, that I'm like, go find another sport or another hobby, like real bad, like go do that. But that's just me again now in my small sample size of like maybe 20, 30 athletes.
Yeah.
But powerlifting, if you look at it, I said percentage wise, like a lot of bodybuilders are happy powerlifting because it is performance enough. And I think that's pretty cool. And it's stuff that they're most likely doing already. Olympic lifting, not good for everybody. I'm realizing that. Most people that can back squat, you can't just like overhead squat the next day. Like it's a lot more involved than people would think. Although a lot of people, not my personal athletes, but a lot of people online I see have gone to like CrossFit and really enjoyed it. For whatever reason, I didn't like that because I don't like classes really, whatever. But there's a lot of CrossFitters that used to just lift for size or competed in bikini or whatever. So I think that's more common than people would think.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I think for someone like me, powerlifting would be suicide from like a connective tissue kind of perspective. So I was literally thinking about like, I don't know, I like singing, so maybe I should form a band or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a good, if you can get someone to accept that, okay, this is really long term, it's not going to happen fast, what can I focus on in the meantime? I don't think it has to be a sport, right? Like you said, like singing or whatever. I know, I'm trying to think of like other people. Do you know who Nsima Nyang is? He's one of Berto's clients. He's on Instagram, the Natty Professor. He trains at Super Training.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah, he went back to jujitsu. Like he did that apparently, or martial arts a while back. Now he's a tremendous power lifter and bodybuilder, but he did that. I think I don't know. I think a lot of people that get into bodybuilding forgot that they like had fun at one point. So like, what did you think was fun beforehand? And meat flipping around was fun, and learning new skills was fun, right? In gymnastics, and it just feels super right again.
Yeah, and I was just talking about this with just speaking of forgetting how it is to have fun. I just had this conversation. I was interviewing Paul Revella, and I was just telling him how the other day I went on a walk, and I'm not dieting at the moment, and I was well fed, and the sun was shining. And it was like, damn, this is how it feels like to just walk and actually enjoying it in the sun, like, and having a lot of energy. It was crazy. Like, I totally forgot what it felt like, because in my mind, kind of building my physique and just, I guess you could call it bodybuilding, even though I never competed, but it became one with the whole concept of deprivation and always taking away food and just starving. So yeah, it's very powerful to relearn how it is to have fun and enjoying yourself.
Yeah, I think that's not just a bodybuilding problem. I think that's like an adult problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like people assume like you had fun doing whatever you did in like grade school, high school, whatever, and then you feel like you become an adult and like work has to be your thing, but I don't think it does. I think I think people forget that you can still go do the things that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Drawing, coloring, like whatever it is, Yeah. I think that is like just an adult problem, that it's not, that it's like frowned upon to do things strictly for enjoyment, right? Because our society is so like achieve. And it's like, why don't you do shit just cause?
So I guess to just put a final point on this theme, like what is when you're off season, you're focusing on your sport in terms of your kind of bodybuilding type behaviors like tracking food, weighing in, doing things like this, eating out? You know, what are your kind of general policies or behaviors that you adopted over your recent years?
Yeah. Okay. So I probably, like I've been recently, I injured or thought I did injure myself. I had like a weird, small abdominal strain, right, for like 6 weeks. And so prior to that, right, I hadn't tracked my food in probably 3 or 4 months. But since I was training like no lower body for 6 weeks, and I felt myself like in the morning, I was like, you're a little squishier. Let me track for a little bit. So I've been tracking a little bit here and there, probably 3-4 times a week, just to kind of see where I'm at lately. But I'd say if I look at the last year of my life, I maybe track a third of the days, not even half the time, as far as food goes. And it's not so much like a target, but like, let's see what a trend is. So like if I'm like I said, I'm like, what is happening? I'll maybe track for a full week, because I eat mostly the same stuff all the time, and see like, what am I taking in? Okay, that's fair, you know. And then like I'll just keep make an adjustment or whatever if I need, and then just keep on going with whatever. So I probably track, like I said, maybe a third to a half of the time. And then in terms of weighing in, I'm very, very reluctant for me and my body weight. I barely weigh in, maybe once or twice a month.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's so much. I don't even want to say like it stresses me out to know. I feel like I've just gotten to a point where like I kind of know. You know what I mean? Like when I wake up, I can kind of tell if I'm like, for example, last night I had some friends in town. We went to a concert, and I ate afterwards. Really like, this is a bad day to weigh. I'm like, no, it's like not indicative of what's really going on. And so I think too, again, like I got injured, and I know I wasn't expending as many calories. And like one morning I woke up and I was like, I think we might be a little fluffier than we probably need to. And I weighed in, and actually I on the scale I wasn't, but I'm also smart enough to know, I'm like, well, you actually haven't been lifting as much in your lower half. So it's probably lost, or you're a little deflated right now. Right. So I was surprised I didn't weigh more, but I know I'm squishier. So it's like, I think I've just finally, after like maybe 5 years of being like religious about caring about my body, that I kind of know what's going on for the most part.
Yeah.
Also in how my clothes fit, like because I wear the same damn Nike Pro shorts to train in every freaking day. And if they're like a little tighter on my thighs, I'm like, okay, calm it down a little, you know? But I've gotten good at seeing myself more objectively in that way. Like, again, if I would have seen the scale move 3-4 years ago, I would immediately be like, what do I need to change? And now it's like, I kind of almost go backwards. I'm like, all right, so what's the last week been like? Are you not sleeping enough? Are you injured? Has the training not been what it should be? Or you just, this is a week you had a bunch of 2-a-days and you might just be swollen from stress. I don't know. I almost see it as checkpoints rather than like it's telling me what's going on. Like, yeah. I don't see it as, gospel, I guess, like I used to, because I know there's a lot more stuff moving around. It's easier too to see it less strict when my training isn't as calculated. So like I have weight training, but it's never the same every day. Like, when you follow a program for just bodybuilding or just powerlifting, it's pretty much spread as evenly as possible. And it's the same almost every week. My coach gives me new training every day. So every day of training is different. 3 days a week, I have 2-a-days. So it's almost like my body weight can almost never tell me exactly what's going on because my training is always different. And so that's probably good that those are disassociated now. In terms of eating out, I'd probably have 2 good meals a week out with my boyfriend. It's always like Wednesday nights and Saturday nights because the next day I'm off. I don't like feeling kind of heavier on it. I don't like waking up feeling kind of weird on training days. Or sodium bloat, or like if I go have a margarita, whatever. But probably a couple times a week I'll have a really good meal that I don't give a shit really what's in it. And when I say I don't give a shit, for me, it's still like I do want protein and I do want, because I want to feel good. So I guess that's it too, is I finally am at a place where I'm eating because I want to feel good for training versus I'm eating because I'm watching my body comp.
Yeah. No lava cakes.
Not really. And I don't even want to say never. Like Easter was this past weekend, and my family I was like a 4-hour drive to go see them. And every time there's a holiday, I'm eating whatever's there. And it's usually in my family, Mexican food and a trashy dessert or whatever, but I'll eat it.
Yeah, I mean, I really like how, like, first of all, the weighing strategy. I heard it from you that you don't want to get a whole bunch of trashy data. And I started using the same thing. Like when I know, like, for example, today I experimented with some weird recipes with a lot of xanthan gum. I'm not going to weigh in tomorrow because the scale is going to reflect something entirely different than what's going on, like fat cell expansion wise. But the other thing is that how, like, you're not tracking all the time. And in a sense, you could call this intuitive eating, but at the same time, you can see from your description, or everybody can see that it's not intuitive eating in the sense of like, oh, my body is telling me that I should eat some candy or whatever, or like I'm in front of the TV, I should go ham on these pretzels or whatever. Like you still have a lot of structure, you're familiar with foods, and you know what you should be eating to support your goals and to take care of your body composition, right?
Yeah. It's, we say intuitive eating, but your intuition is different when you've been tracking for like 5 to 10 years. You know, your intuition is, I guess it's developed. It's not, because a lot of people, I don't think, when I would say not people in our field, but like people in the general population, when they say they feel like eating something, a lot of times that's emotional feel. Whereas someone who really knows like what's in their food and they've been tracking forever, sometimes what they feel like me, where it's like my lunch, if I only have one training session, will be less, like after I train, it'll be a less dense, it'll include some fruits and vegetables, a lot of meat, you know, but if I know I have to go back again, it'll be just as many calories, but I'll pick smaller foods like a energy bar and something that's like might be the same, like 400 calories, but I can fit it in the palm of my hand versus like filling a whole plate. That's what I mean by intuitive. Like I know if I have to run tonight, I don't want to eat this big ass meal because it'll feel too heavy in my stomach. Like that kind of feel is different than like I feel depressed and chocolate sounds good. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, the intuition is a little bit different. So that's a good point.
Yeah. It reminds me of I once took this, I guess it was like a stock trader course or something like that, and the trainer said that guys, at some point you have to go kind of by feel, but trust me, the way I'm feeling is very different than how you're feeling at this point.
That's a good point. Yeah, good way to say it.
Yeah, cool. So I think we covered a lot of cool stuff here, and the final thing I want to ask you about is something on, like, as far as I know, you're also a big kind of personal development kind of girl, right? Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, I'm always working on myself. I know when people hear personal development, they think like motivation. I mean, like kind of, but yeah, I just like working on myself because it translates into everything I do, and I have a weird tendency to have to publish it somewhere. But yeah, I'm really into it.
No, that's good. That's good. I just recently adopted a new intro for my podcast, and like the name of my podcast is Sustainable Self-Development, and the intro of my podcast is the most corny, disgusting crap I ever heard, but I had to put it there because that's just what fits the theme. So but anyway, so first of all, if you look at your life and kind of the success you achieved, and if you look at resources or just general habits that help you over recent years, what couple of it could be as simple habits as maybe just time management, but anything that comes to mind that you would just point at as like, okay, this was definitely a game changer or just really helped me out over time. Is there anything like that comes to mind?
Yeah, reading again. I just started reading again in like last year and a half or so. I finally got Audible because I went from grad school and like reading all the school books to just reading everything I could about bodybuilding and trying to change my physique, for like fucking 4 years. And then when I finally I was at a place, again, where Berto's like, dude, we can only do so much, like chill, only so much is productive. And so I was like, I guess my first segue, right, before I found grid, when I was just like looking for things to work on, I was like, it had to be myself because I wasn't happy, So I think that it's almost like everything has its purpose, right? Me being unhappy, not able to find a sport, got me back into reading again, which I always loved as a kid. And not just like YouTube videos and blog posts, because like that's always something that's like easy to find or whatever, but actually getting into books and making notes in them. And I guess that's a huge thing. And what I do is, because I am so like physically busy all the time, audiobooks have been a huge game changer for me. And if I hear one I like, then I'll go buy it and then read it at night and highlight it and da, da, da. So I go through almost every book, like at least, if I like it, at least twice, both audio and then physically. And then I'll go back and forth when I need it. There's some books I'll listen to over and over, but
how do you pick the books that you're going to read next?
Either they're mentioned within other books that I read, or there's certain people or authors that I follow or heard good talks or heard them on a podcast maybe or whatever. And sometimes after a while, right, Amazon and Audible are pretty good at being like, here are the recommendations based on your previous purchases. So sometimes I'll get one of those. So a lot of different ways.
What book would you recommend to someone who right now is like, that's not me, by the way, just as an interesting kind of example.
Okay.
So like someone who is at a really dark place right now and going through something very challenging and are looking for kind of some light at the end of the tunnel, just some inspiration to just, pick themselves up and carry on. What kind of books would you recommend to that person?
There's a couple depending on their personality. As far as like having a big challenge, The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday is a really great book. There's one that I'm like convinced that everyone should read, and it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. And it is so like just a practical human book that's not, it is personal development, but it's like basically you, instead of being like, you can do everything and it's all going to be okay, he's like, look, it's all going to suck. You can't get everything done. It's like the exact opposite. So if you can't give a fuck about everything, what do you really care about? And how do you change that? Because the rest of it, like, for real, it doesn't matter. Like, so it's a much more practical, pragmatic, pessimistic approach, which I like to, to just approaching life in general. So I feel like that's the first book I've come across in the last few years where I'm like, this could literally help, I think, anybody, not just like an athlete or not just like a business person, but like anybody to just kind of deal. So it's really good.
Cool. Okay. Obstacle is the Way. Subtle Art of Not Giving a I can't swear. It's my podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't even ask you if I could swear.
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. So what book would you recommend to someone who is maybe at crossroads in their lives? Maybe they are getting into college or out of college and they are maybe having a quarter life crisis kind of thing, or they just really want to build a good, interesting life and a cool career for themselves. What kind of books come to mind there?
A couple that come to mind would be The Dip by Seth Godin. Where it's very much a crossroads kind of book. Like, do you keep going on this or do you quit this and go elsewhere kind of thing? Another one that comes to mind is Choose Yourself by James Altucher. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's like being like, hey, in the world we live in, you kind of really can do anything. So instead of waiting for someone to give you permission, you kind of take it on your own and sack up and do it. What else comes to mind? Crossroads, getting out of... Play It Away by Charlie Hone is a good one that kind of fits into what we were talking about. Like, if you do put everything to career and forget yourself, though, and forget to play, like just how important, as weird as it sounds, play like whatever, like singing or golf, or like for me, it is being an athlete, like doing the things that you love and that relax you and how good that can be for you. Also, never mind. That's not going to answer your question. There's another good book, Kelly McGonigal, and it's something about stress. Damn it.
Oh, The Upside of Stress?
Yes. I think that's another one for everyone to read too. Like going backwards to the one where it's like, chill out, it's going to be all right. And this is the way to deal with it. Everyone's so stressed out nowadays, including myself, but I feel like that's pretty a practical and useful way.
Yeah, and also just the fear of being stressed out can almost create more stress, especially like in physique sports. Like, sleep is so important. I need to get whatever 9.5 hours of sleep, and then you go try to take a power nap, and you're never gonna fall asleep. So, yeah, perfect. Just a kind of a weird question here. You as you're working a lot online and you're coaching people online. So I guess I'm imagining you're managing your own time mostly. Do you have any kind of tool or method to manage your own time, do a to-do list, and kind of just ensure that you're productive all the time, or at least when you need to be?
Yeah, I have so many lists. It's so stupid. It makes no sense to anybody. Did you watch my podcast with Ryan by any chance? I'm sorry. I have like 4 systems of how to remember things. But yeah, I like lists. I like written things. I like everything has to get written somewhere, documented. I guess if anything, I've made it finally, after a lot of years of trying to fill my brain with things. If I could sum it all up, it's that everything that comes in my head has to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then I can deal with it later. So, there's an app on my phone that anytime a thought comes into my head, literally anytime when I'm not sitting at my computer, it goes in the phone. It goes in the phone in this one particular app. And from there, every day, I'll sort it into its various lists. So whether that's a content list, a to-do list for the day, a to-do this month, this is a good idea to deal with later list. Like there's lists everywhere, but it's basically the only way that I can function is if it gets put somewhere, because my brain can only deal with so much.
So what's the app you're using?
Well, what I do is I think a lot of people have heard of If This Then That, and it's basically applets that control other things. So like a most basic example, like you can set up to where if I put a picture on Instagram, then I also want it to go to Facebook. I know that they do that natively, but like another thing would be like, if I press this button on my app, it'll immediately send a timestamp with a text message to this same friend every time. Or like it's literally just like you can create these triggers that make other things happen, right? And part of one of the things that If This Then That offers is called Do Note. So I have this one app in my phone, and I click it, I type in, and I put send, and it goes directly into a program called Slack on my computer. And Slack is a team management software that we use. Like I use it with we use it for the podcast as a team in Slack. Me and the guys with 3DMJ have a team in Slack. And I have my own team in Slack where it's just me, and Ryan is making fun of me. But basically everything that comes into my head, I send to my private Slack group with the just me. And within that, then I'll look at it every day and sort it into the various channels of like, oh, this is an idea for later, or I need to write this down in my today's to-do list, or I need to put it in the list of phone calls to make, or whatever. So I guess that's the quickest way to sum it up. Yeah, is it goes through, it's called Do Note, which gets sent directly to a Slack channel. And Slack I have open when I'm working at night, so I know to go through that and filter it out.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, it's actually, I knew that you talked about this with Ryan. I think I just kind of zoned out because I was on the leg extension machine. I remember when you were, when you were talking about this. So it was like, but I just remember that I was really laughing when Ryan said that he thought that like, if it's really important, I'm going to remember it. But that's not how it's working. But yeah, like my problem was always that I created these beautiful systems of like content schedule and interview, like people to interview list and to-do list, but then I just never looked at it. So
yeah, that's I have it written, like I say, every day I go through it, but like I have a list of what I do every day that sits on my computer. It's like every day when I sit down, I fill out the training I did today. I put it in my sheet that I share with my coach. Then I do my athlete reports for the day. And then I go through that Slack channel and filter this shit out. And then depending on what ended up on that day's like written list is what I'll do. And I don't get it all done every day, but I need at least the suggestion of like, this is what should get done, right? And then throughout that big ass list, it's like there's only, let's be honest, like 2 or 3 things that if they get done, it really matters. And the rest of them are like, yeah, this would also be cool. But there's, I can't do everything every day. And I try to spread it out based on my training days. Like I try not to, like all my podcast interviews I do on Thursdays because it's the only day that I don't have to go to the gym necessarily. It's an active recovery day. So sometimes I do go on like elliptical for a little while or do a light circuit. But like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, I definitely go train for like multiple hours. So I don't do them then. And so there's all those little caveats to it. But in general, that's the theme. If I could think of a productivity tool that helped me, it's saving my brain space for shit that actually matters and using technology to help me not keep it all in my head.
All right. Beautiful. So thank you so much. And before I ask you my very last question, just please tell people where they can find you and any resources you'd like them to check out.
Sure. So with me and the other 4 gentlemen of 3D MuscleJourney, that's where you can find everything we do is at 3dmusclejourney.com. That's where we have 2 articles a week that come out. We have a podcast every week and it can all be found there. But if you want to look at it all like separately, we do have an Instagram at Team 3DMJ. We all have individual ones. We do have a Twitter at Team 3DMJ. We have youtube.com/Team3DMJ. And obviously our podcast is on iTunes. If you just search 3D, it'll pop up somewhere.
Yeah. And you have your own podcast as well, right?
Correct. Yeah. And anything I do, you can go to AndreaValdez.com. I write every week or 2. I just started my own podcast, which is not about fitness necessarily. It's just people that I really like and find interesting. And it's all the people. Yes, a lot of my friends, almost all of them are from fitness, but I don't love them because of their fitness information. And I like to have everyone find out why I love them outside of that.
Awesome. Yeah. I would highly recommend people to check that out. And my very last question, because I know that a lot of people will be wondering about this. I saw or I watched a 3DMJ podcast episode, which was about finding your fitness career. And so for people who are kind of trying to do what you do or just trying to get into the space, there are a lot of ways to do it. I mean, you can be one of these aesthetics people if you have the genetics and you look really beautiful. You can be an evidence-based, super smart guy if you can educate yourself sufficiently. But as you know, there is a lot of competition and everybody is looking for attention. What would you advise to people if they are trying to find their own voice and just trying to come across as an authentic, original, individual in this whole industry?
Yeah. A few very general pieces of advice would be pick 1 or 2 channels where you can, like you said, go ham, right? Like I think starting off, it's really hard to be really present on all the things, right? On YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and whatever, like in a podcast. So I think it's really hard to do everything. So maybe pick 1 or 2 that you can do consistently and provide really great quality content, right? And I would say do it for like a year because it's gonna change. You're gonna not that your things will change, but like there's things that you think in your head that actually come out differently. Like you might think you're a really great talker, but maybe you're not. You're actually a really good writer. Or maybe you think that your audience wants information, but then you find out that they actually just want perspective of your life. So I would say pick 1 or 2 channels, right? Platforms that you're going to go hard on, and purposefully try delivering different messages in different ways. See which ones feel good to you. See which ones people actually respond to. And just treat it like an experiment and what does or doesn't work. Like, I think if there's one thing I accidentally did right, was just YouTube hard every day for like a year and a half. And like at least 5 videos a week. And it worked out really well for me. And then I branched out and it kind of like fizzled, So I think that's important. And I think just a couple of common mistakes I see with, I don't want to say like it's necessarily a mistake, but something that is, if you think about it, pretty ineffective, but I don't think people think about it, is podcasts and Snapchat are far more effective if you already have an audience.
Yeah.
Than if you're just starting out, because it's hard for you to be established with people to know you well enough to be like, what are they saying? Like, podcasts are just long form, right? And it's just, if either you need to have really, really great guests, or people need to already know who you are outside of that. And then because Snapchat, people just can't find you natively. So if you have like 10 friends on Snapchat, right, because you have to search by someone's username, you don't just, it's not a feed like Instagram where it suggests people to you. Yeah. So maybe just be a little pickier about what you start to use. That's all. And then other advice, be okay with understand that you're getting better in making your content, whether people listen to it or not. Don't think it's shit if no one's there yet. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point.
Yeah. Cause it's not going to be there. Don't expect to make it and like people will come. Like, it's very much your job to understand. I guess you have to love it enough to want to do it, whether people come or not. And if you don't, this is not the space for you, because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And then, okay, last piece of advice: when you do get those first 50, 100 people, take care of them big time. Take care of them, because they are your gateway to everything else. So find your lifers, or whatever you want to call them, really early on, and treat them well.
All right, that advice was golden. So people write those tips on the wall, because they were very useful. Yeah, I guess I'm one of those weirdos who started podcasting before I actually had an audience,
but you have really good guests, and you did that well.
Yeah, and also like I enjoy doing it, even if nobody would listen to them. It was like, finally I get to ask the questions that I always wanted other hosts to ask them. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it, and like the fact that you love it enough to get out of it what you want, regardless of do it though, right? And you being like, I have to do this podcast. It's just it serves me, and that is it takes a special kind of person. As you know, most people are doing it because they want people to come on, but it's it's just big of you, and that's an important trait. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an honor to talk to you, and I've taken up quite a bit of your time, so thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Really, thanks for having me.
All right, guys, Abel here again. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please subscribe on YouTube if you watched it there. I come out with new content every week there, whether it's in the form of a podcast episode like this, which I actually aim to do one off every week, or some shorter informational video. Also, if you could just leave a comment and suggest some people that you'd like me to interview, or just topics you'd like me to cover, it would be very helpful to know how I can better serve you. And if you listen to it in podcast format, if you could leave a rating on iTunes, it would greatly help out the show, and I would be more than grateful for it. So thanks, guys, for hanging out up until now. Thanks for being here, and see you all next week.